Gen Z are not having kids, and the older generations are freaking out about it. A lot of the distress that previous generations to us are having seems to be coming from the fact that they're rapidly becoming the very first generations to have not transitioned into grandparents. We're always hearing, you just gotta wait for the right one to come along and then you'll want all their babies. I remember being your age, sweetheart. I didn't want kids either, but I grew out of it. You have a biological clock and it just hasn't struck time yet. And it's exhausting because nobody seems to be listening to us when we say we genuinely can't. And no, in most cases, it has nothing to do with us being infertile or, you know, our bodies just won't allow us to. It's in fact far more sinister than people really think.
Gen Z is not trying to have kids. And I don't blame them. Because I ain't trying to have them little either. But the government is shaking in their boots because we don't want children. Our grandparents and parents are shaking in their boots because we don't want children. They keep asking why. I'm gonna tell you. Probably because we can't afford to. Y'all do know the cost of living went up 68%, but our wages only went up 18%.
And you know what's interesting about that is, of course, many years ago, it was so much cheaper to bring up children. And our parents, grandparents, previous generations to us are also feeling the effects of the cost of living crisis. So it genuinely doesn't make any sense when they're to sit there and they're like, well, you just haven't met the right person yet. Don't worry, a couple of years from now, you'll regret your decision to not have kids. And it's like, what? Mama, if you were to have us today,
we don't even know if we're gonna have a suitable earth to raise our kids in the next 40 years, and you want me to bring a child into this world?
Apparently, we aren't going to be having a suitable earth within the next 30, 40, 50 years or so. I am not going to be risking having my future children spitting on my grave because I've put them in a situation where there is no turning back, where the world is a lot more scarier, where the world might not survive. And I know how anxiety inducing that is to say, for that to come out of my mouth. But if I'm being honest, that fear mongering that is happening in the media is making me genuinely second guess myself. I'll be honest, it was never in my plan to have kids to begin with. You know, to my knowledge, I'm not infertile. I'm even on the pill. But I gotta be raw here. I gotta be honest with you guys. It has crossed my mind a couple of times whether or not I would actually have kids in the future. But that decision in of itself is kind of just being stripped away from us just because of the sheer amount of corruption that goes on globally. How you could afford to have a child 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago isn't the same today. And people's wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. Furthermore, it feels like there is genuinely nothing outside of work. Meaning, what is life genuinely like outside of work? And I'm sorry, I'm not going to blame people for exploring that rather than having kids.
And I'm not saying all of Gen Z, because some of y'all took the risk. Me, personally, and the vast majority of the people I know, they're not even thinking about it. Not even trying to consider it. How are we going to have children if we can't even afford ourselves? I know people that's so backed up on student loans, they just don't want to pay for that no more. And since the government is getting so upset about it, my honest take is the government only wants us to have children so we can go back and ask the government for help. The help that they're not even going to give us. The help that they're going to claim that they don't have.
Yeah, because remember during the pandemic when we were all told to stay the home, and if you weren't an essential worker, such as somebody who worked at a grocery store or a doctor or a health professional or somebody in an essential working field, it was kind of just like, you. And so even risking being in a global disaster like that again, where you could be thrown out of work because you're not considered essential enough, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Especially with children, small children at that. I don't even know how half of the population's parents got through it all.
But they had billions of dollars to fund the war in Israel, though. They had billions of dollars to bring migrants across country. But our healthcare system and our school system is still Gen Z is the most unhinged, most honest, most I don't give a generation there is. So you think Gen Z is going to fall for we need to have kids to better our population? You're smoking. because it's not happening. Everybody keep asking us what we gonna do when we get older. Who knows? Who knows if we're even gonna get older? I might just off myself before I even get that old, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like I said before, the government is disgusting and they fund corruption that happens around the world. I can't even fathom what the world is going to be looking like in 20, 30, 40 years from now. If it's looking like this right now, I don't know. And constantly hearing not only my peers, but people that I don't even know on social media who are like, well, yeah, I'm just considering offing myself within the next 20 years because what am I going to do when I'm old? I'm not going to have any kids. I'm not going to have a house. I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to have that. And that is grim. I have never before heard people just speak so openly about wanting to off themselves, taking themselves out of the equation. Or just, that's a whole other conversation for another time because it is genuinely so disturbing how we're all just so comfortable with that idea now that it is in the plan for some people. And here's the funny part about this, all right? Everyone always goes on about how Gen Z is the most mentally ill generation there has been. I acknowledge that I'm not showing up for myself most days. I will forget to brush my teeth. I'll forget to put deodorant on. I will forget to shower. I will forget to eat. I will forget to drink. I will genuinely forget to take care of myself and I'm supposed to take care of another human being? I don't think so, because if I already acknowledge all of these things, the chances are that I'm going to bring another person into this world where I have to do that for them times 10. No, sweetheart. I think it's a very complex conversation as to why Gen Z is not wanting to have kids, because it doesn't just pertain to financial issues or inflation eating out our asses clean. But Gen Z has a rampant problem with mental health issues that have gone long unaddressed, mostly for the reason being that the mental health system is largely lacking. For example, I am still on a wait list to see a psychologist. It has been what, 8 months? 9 months? I can't even remember the last time that I even followed up on that, because the last time I did, I remember calling the psychologist and he's on the phone like, well, I'm actually leaving for holidays next week, so we're going to be pretty backed up. I'll give you a call in a few weeks' time. I saved the day in my phone and everything like that. I never got a call, so a week later I called them again and I was like, hey, just following up, blah blah blah. Well, actually no, we don't have any appointments available until mid-December. This was in, I think, June last year. But I also acknowledge the fact that mental health care workers are on the decrease because they too have mental health issues, not only personal stuff that they are going through, but because dealing with mentally ill people every single day, day in and day out, isn't an easy feat for anybody, really. Every single second that you have a purpose here on earth, sweetheart. Like, and even I'm telling you that right now, all right? But this kind of field does not have care for the mental health care professionals. And so it gets to a point where they're just like, you know what, go ahead, do it. And then they don't know what to say. They're very bitter, they're very upset, they're very angry, they're very agitated because they're like, why am I continuing to do this all day, every day? I hate my life. Like, it's such a complex issue, but this is just the reality of how mentally ill people are treated today. Social media within itself has been a large contributing factor to just that. And on top of that, nobody really took it seriously until we saw Gen Alpha at the ripe age of 8 being afraid that they were going to get wrinkles by the time they turned 16, 17, 18. Like, how genuinely deranged is that?
I'm older and I have my kids and I bring them to a restaurant and I see fellow parents at the table next to me and their kids have iPads at a restaurant in public? What? I'm gonna scream.
Much like most people without kids, he goes on to say everything he's not going to do and how terrible and terribly Gen Alpha behaves. because we've done nothing but stick electronics in their face. They can't read, they can't communicate, they're misbehaved.
Yeah, which is largely the truth. A lot of it has to do with social media and having social media at such a young age. Like, I do not care if a kid is just on its iPad playing Subway Surf or maybe some educational games. But the problem is when these kids are brain rotted by the time they turn 5 because they've had unrestricted access to the internet, to TikTok, and then we have these millennial parents constantly arguing with us that are like, well, you guys got social media at a really young age. Yeah, which you know, the proof is in the pudding, really. I got social media at a really young age, and I can say with my entire chest that yes, it has fucked with my head. It has with me as a human being. There's a lot of stuff that I should not have seen at that age. And then y'all are like, well, why are you guys judging? Why are you guys... Because we went through the exact same thing, but now the kids are getting younger and younger and younger. The amount of experiences that I've personally had being in restaurants, being at the malls, being in public anywhere, and these little ass kids just, they act completely different to how kids used to act. And I know that sounds very boomerish, and it's like, Caitlin, you're 22, not 62. Like, yes, I get it, but it's like there is such a larger problem at hand here that yes, people are talking about it, but people are genuinely not taking it as seriously as they should. And writing it off like this, look, you may be bringing up your kid different, but that doesn't mean there are people that are.
Like, why can't we just talk to them at dinner at a restaurant, is what he said. Weren't we all perfect parents before we actually had kids? The difference I think Gen Z is missing and misunderstanding with millennial parents raising kids is that we're not raising them the same way our parents raised us, which was essentially to beat us into submission.
Okay, but here's the thing. Gen Z has had to go through the same exact thing too. I think some millennials tend to forget that Gen Z was parented pretty much the exact same way that they were when they were kids. Like, Gen Z kids were beat. They were hit, smacked for doing the wrong thing, and then yelled at and then screamed at to say, never do that again. It's just, I feel like comparing that to giving your kid an iPad is really incomparable. It's like comparing apples to oranges. They're just not the same thing.
I mean, got a lot of us real quiet real quick. It also did an incredible amount of damage to us, which is why you have a lot of millennials walking around with anxiety and depression, who don't know what to do with their own feelings and emotions, because instead of being taught how to correctly manage them and cope with them, we were simply turned away or beaten for having them.
Which is disgusting, to say the very least. These kinds of punishments do the exact opposite of what the parent is wanting to happen, which is to listen to them, to respect them. There is no respect. There's more so just fear, anxiety. So you tend to try your hardest to not make human mistakes. I feel like this is heading towards well, putting an iPad in front of my kid isn't a bad thing because, you know, I'm not beating them, I'm not hitting them, I'm not smacking them. Okay, so you're talking about the fact that you couldn't regulate your emotions and you still kind of today struggling with the same thing. But putting an iPad in front of a child while it's squealing and crying and acting a fool in public is doing the same thing. They aren't going to know how to regulate their emotions if they're constantly being rewarded or given something for it. That is why I always advocate for communication in relationships with parents in any sort of situation, pretty much ever. Communication is key. So yeah, you kind of do have to sit there, and I know it's so hard for some parents to do, to sit there and talk to their kids as if they're not blobs of nothing and they're actually human beings, because even if they are 3, 4, 5, 6, they still can think and feel, and they are human, you know. Not saying that this is what this mother is doing, by the way, but I'm just putting it out there.
Which most millennials have gone against so hard. We are trying so hard not to take the easy way out of simply smacking our kids around when they decide to misbehave. Because kids are kids. They are going to do what they want when they want. Now, can we and are we trying to do our very best to keep them well behaved in a public place? Of course.
I think the collective difference that Gen Z has to some of these millennials is that we completely understood we can't have the best of both worlds. We understand that while the concept of having a child of our own would be amazing, beating a kid in a restaurant to be quiet is bad, but so is shoving an iPad in front of their faces. I like to call it the shutting up device. Here, shut the f up, don't talk to me. I am not going to take the couple minutes out of my day to ask you how you're feeling, even though that's the one thing that is proven time and time and time again to be the thing that helps. Kids don't understand their emotions. That's why they need help understanding. You are their parent, no? And yes, while those two actions are not the same, it is one and the same with emotional irregulation. I completely empathize with parents who are having to use an iPad to get their kids to be quiet in public to not cause a scene, because yeah, it is embarrassing. Everyone and their mum's dog's uncle are looking, but it's still like having kids is such a commitment. And personally, speaking for myself, if I cannot fully commit to something, I just won't do it. And I'll be honest, I apply that to pretty much every aspect of my life. I really want a dog. My mum recently got a puppy and she is the most gorgeous, loving, soft, fluffy thing in the world. I want one really bad. But I already have 2 cats that take up a significant amount of my time. I really want a dog, but I don't even have a yard to accommodate for it. If it wants to go outside and play, if it wants to go outside and take a quick poo-poo, I don't have a yard. I don't even have time flexibility throughout the day to go and take them on walks and properly care for them. So what have I done? I don't have a dog. I have not gotten a dog. And until those things change and I can fully commit to getting a dog, that's when I'll get a dog. But it's kind of like that Gen Z over self-awareness that causes us to be like, hey, let's think about this analytically. We wouldn't want to shut our kids up with an iPad at a restaurant because our doom scrolling makes us feel like shit. And we can see how our own actions are affecting us mentally and as a person overall. Hence why the original poster made that video. There's a lot of factors that come into play in Gen Z's declining of birth. And the questioning around it all makes little to no sense.
Does Gen Z feel too much doom about the world to want to have kids? I'm a journalist and I wrote this story. I talked to Brooklyn, who says she's never having kids, and a lot of her Gen Z friends agree. She said that when she was younger, she wanted to be a mom, but things have just changed between economic instability, climate change, and just how hopeless the future seems to her. She doesn't understand like bringing kids into that. So she says, the members of Gen Z I know tend to believe in the American dream less than the generations before us. Most of my friend group just don't see a path in the future where we have a good, stable job and can afford both a house and a family. U.S. birth rates have also been declining for decades, so this isn't totally surprising. And between millennials and Gen Z, we will not have enough kids to sustain America's current population. Experts are super concerned about this, but I just am like, I mean, look around, like, look at inflation, look at rising rent and stagnant wages, look at climate change, and like, no wonder people are having second thoughts about this. What are your thoughts?
And what's crazy to me is that the older generations keep on asking us, when are you having the kids? When are the babies coming? Why aren't the babies coming? Why don't you want kids? You're gonna end up sad and alone. Did you know that? Did you know that you just haven't met the right person yet and that's why you don't want kids? Has it ever occurred to any of you the most popular reasons, even stated here, that the reason Gen Z does not want kids, does not want babies, is because the world is changing for the worst at the moment. There is a lot of regression at the same time, and it's sad to see. Not only can we not afford children, we can't afford ourselves. The wages that we are killing ourselves for is just not cutting it, really. It is not keeping up with the cost of food. It is not keeping up with the cost of gas and petrols and overall living. And inflation doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon. And the corruption around the world is really scary and disgusting and abhorrent. Why exactly would we want to bring up children in the world? I know that there is a very nihilistic approach to this that some people have, and it can get annoying, but it's just the truth. And I hope that the older generations can take a look at this video and really just, you know, hear a proper perspective instead of kids are annoying, I just don't want to have kids, I don't want to get pregnant because it'll ruin my body and all this kind of stuff that is just like, okay, no one cares. So with all of that being said, everybody, I really appreciate your stay in Yappersville today. Going to the Elimination Chamber in Perth kind of messed up my uploading schedule for a couple of days, but the bitch is back. So with all that said, thanks for your stay at Yappersville today. I hope to see you all again soon. Take care of yourselves, and most of all, love your fucking selves.